The year is 2050. People and the planet are thriving in peace and prosperity. How did we get here? A world where all sustainable development goals of 2030 have been realized. This illustrated story explores the power of water to strengthen food security. What type of water is needed for growing food, you may ask? This is the vision which we hope to achieve through TIARA, where in 2050, the Zambezi Watercourse Commission is investing big to support rain-fed agriculture across the basin's 8 countries. And where the project Transforming Investments in African Rain-Fed Agriculture has contributed to the success thanks to an understanding that irrigation investments alone could not solve the food shortages. A different approach was needed to rethink the investments. In 2050, for the first time in Africa, agricultural investments have taken a turn for the better. Funders continue to actively choose where they want to invest, building on the lessons learned from the hotspots that were supported through the project. The impact is visible on the ground. People are still doing what they have always done. But the difference now is that the traditional practices are relevant to today's people. Agriculture is no longer viewed as backbreaking. It has become the first choice for young people. And it is something they pick up, and it is not something that they pick up when everything else fails. This is the vision that we hope to achieve with TIARA. Welcome to this session on transforming investments in African rain-fed agriculture for the Zambezi Watercourse. My name is Shanani Baloyi. I'm a program officer for the Stockholm International Water Institute at the Africa Regional Center in Pretoria, and I also serve as SIWI's Gender Equality Focal Point. This session aims to facilitate the mobilization of public and private finance for activities that support rural communities along the Zambezi Watercourse by enhancing rain-fed agriculture, increasing food security, and improving climate resilience through water and land management. I would like to invite a SIWI representative, my director, Anton L. He directs the Africa-based operations for the Stockholm International Water Institute. Anton has over 15 years of experience specializing in transboundary water management and institutional capacity development. Anton, may you do the welcome remarks.
Great, thank you very much, Shanani. Thank you very much, everybody. I'm very, very pleased to be over here representing SIWI and in partnership with the Zambezi Watercourse Commission that we are so happy to be working alongside on this initiative, and a range of other partners such as C4, ICRAF that we've been working with. It was interesting sitting in the laureate seminar just about half an hour ago, and I heard the laureate, Professor Bernhardt, speaking about what got him involved with working on evaporation. And he has essentially built an entire career of stretching over many, many years around understanding evaporation better. And one of the statistics he mentioned there really brought it home for me. And he said that of the flow of water through the landscape, 60% of that flux is through evaporation. That's a massive number. So we always think of the Zambezi River, for instance, flowing eastward into the Indian Ocean. And yet, according to those numbers, we lose sight of the invisible, the water that's flowing upwards, that's evaporating across a landscape, across an entire region. That adds up to a lot of water. And of course, his message to us is, make sure that you reduce those evaporative losses, make sure you have more water remaining underground, and eventually serving to sustain the base flows of rivers such as the Zambezi. So we often get that question, why is SIWI, as a water institute, interested in agriculture? And when you look at a catchment like the Zambezi, the millions of people living across that region, engage in rain-fed agriculture primarily, we view those people as our frontline water managers. What those farmers are doing on their individual small plots of land, but at large scale across the entire catchment, has a direct impact on water management further downstream, influencing sedimentation of watercourses and water bodies, but also recharge of aquifers and of groundwater tables. So this is a role that goes largely unrecognized, but these farmers aren't being recognized as water managers. And that's the balance that SIWI would like to shift along with the partners we are working with over here, to recognize that they are our frontline water managers. And if we can draw support to them, to support those activities, to enhance their rain-fed agriculture, and that support, of course, can come from public funding, investments, but also from the international community, to start viewing their activities at farm level as being a bankable activity that has positive influences in terms of your water management, but also increases the capacity to be resilient against climate change. When we've been in the field recently, when we're speaking with communities in the Zambezi catchment, they don't use the future tense when they speak about climate change impacts. They use the present tense. They don't talk about the future impacts of climate change. They'll say, the way my grandparents used to farm and my parents used to farm, we can't farm in that same way anymore because the climate has changed already. The rains are coming later. The rains are coming over a shorter period of time. They're falling heavier. That's the way they speak about it. So it's not just the water management, it's also the ability for these farmers to carry on producing food for their families, and more importantly, to be able to start supplying the entire region with food. We believe this can be done. So I'd like to really thank ZAMCOM for taking the initiative, for including rain-fed agriculture so prominently in their long-term strategic plan. It's recognizing that ZAMCOM expresses the aspirations and the needs of the 8 member states, several of which are represented over here today. And we thank you also for your support. So thank you very much, Shanani, for getting us going.
Thank you, Anton. So moving along with the opening remarks section of the program, I would like to invite Mr. Felix Ngamlagosi, who currently serves as the Executive Secretary of the Zambezi Watercourse Commission. Mr. Ngamlagosi has over 30 years of professional experience in the energy and water sectors. He was the founding director of the Regulatory Economics in Energy and Water Utilities Regulatory Authority of Tanzania, and also being the second director of the same organization, with extensive work in water sector reforms, institutional restructuring. I would like to invite you, Mr. Ngamlagosi, for your remarks.
Thank you, Shannon, for inviting me. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. I recognize presence of the Deputy Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Lands and Water Affairs of the Government of Botswana, and a chairman of the Technical Committee for Zambezi Watercourse Commission, Mr. Molawa. But I also recognize the presence of the Director of Africa Region for SIWI, Anton Eln, and Catherine, Professor Catherine. I note your presence from CIFOL and Accra. Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the Zambezi Watercourse Commission, abbreviated as ZAMCOM, and on my own behalf, I wish to extend a warm welcome to you all for this a very important session, a session that looks at very crucial issues in the cycle of shared water resource development and management in the Zambezi Watercourse. As we have been informed by the Master of Ceremony, the aim of this session is to explore ways of mobilizing resources from both public and private sectors to support rural farmers who mainly depend on rain-fed agriculture. Africa has a population of about 1.2 billion. Out of this population, 40 million is a contribution by the watercourse. And 60% of this face food insecurity, underinvestment, poverty, insignificant value chains. And the variability does not make the situation even easier, as it contributes to underperformance in the rain-fed agriculture sector. It is in this context and reason that ZAMCOM has teamed up with the Swedish International Water Institute, SIWI, in the implementation of the TIARA program for the Zambezi Watercourse. And for this purpose, the session has also been contributed by our colleagues, not only SIWI, but also ICRAF and CIFO. Ladies and gentlemen, ZAMCOM is implementing a strategic plan for the Zambezi Watercourse. And this strategic plan was developed through a multi-stakeholder consultative process, and it's a document that has been approved by the Council of Ministers. The strategic plan has four pillars. One of these pillars is the livelihood support pillar, which includes integration of the development of investment initiatives into enhanced rain-fed agriculture in the watercourse. As we have heard this morning from Anton, rural farmers are our frontier water resource managers. We need to pay attention to them. The strategic plan, which has prioritized projects and programs, aims to increase availability, water availability of smallholder farmers through improved rain-fed agriculture practices. Ladies and gentlemen, while the current focus of TIARA program is on implementing rain-fed agriculture in the Zambezi Watercourse, the lessons learned, the experience gained from this program will inform similar interventions across Africa. Ladies and gentlemen, I thought of sharing with you these highlights, some of these, to demonstrate ZAMCOM's commitment to promoting rural communities and ensuring food security, as well as job creation in rural areas. I do hope that as we interact, we will keep reminding ourselves about our main target, that is making impact on ground among the rural communities. ZAMCOM remains open for further partnering with the SIWI, but also for partnering with financing partners. The financing partners are welcome to contribute to this important improving climate resilience and management for sustainable livelihood in our communities, TIARA program. With these remarks, I thank you so much for your kind attention.
Thank you so much, ES. Yes, and the project or TIARA or SIWI would not be successful in implementing this if we do not have our specialists who are advising us on the enhanced rain-fed agriculture, land management, forestation, deforestation. So with that, I would like to welcome our partners, C4 ICRAF, to also make a remark. So Professor Catherine Muturi will be representing ICRAF. She is the regional coordinator for the Eastern and Southern Africa region. She holds a PhD in plant ecophysiology from the Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology in Kenya, under a split-side scholarship with Nottingham University in the UK. Prof.
Thank you very much, Shanani. Yeah, as you have been told, my name is Catherine. C4 ICRAF brings in the evidence-based research, because our work, we bring in a wealth of experience for over 40 years in terms of delivering actionable evidence and solutions to tackle the global challenges like deforestation, malnutrition, biodiversity loss, using the trees as an important component within the system. We work around 4 continents. We work across 4 continents. We are in Africa, we are in Asia, we are in South Asia, and we are in Latin America. Why the spread? We believe in context, actionable solutions. If you do our work in Zambezi and along the Zambezi River, then we are coming across different countries with different contexts. Zambia is very different from Malawi, and so is different from Zimbabwe. So we, as a technical person within this partnership, which we value so much, we bring in that context appropriate evidence and specific interventions, and which we will discuss and contribute to later on. This resonates very well. The work in TIARA resonates very well within what we do at C4E-Craft, because we have what we call transformative partnerships programs. These are alliances which are built around specific thematic areas to provide solutions and investments into that. And therefore, under the Rainfed agriculture, we have a TPP, in short, we have a TPP on optimizing rain-fed agriculture, water in rain-fed agriculture with trees. And this is where the TIARA program then comes in under a bigger umbrella. We are so excited to be part of this partnership, because then that aligns with the priorities in East and Southern Africa where we are working, and which, which then gives the bigger picture into the bigger ICRAF agenda. And so I am representing my colleague Malesu, who is also a co-lead in the TPP on optimizing rainfed water agriculture in agriculture. Agriculture, one of the things I agree so much with the SIWI DG is that smallholder farmers, ICRAF over the years, we just merged with C4. ICRAF over the years, we work with smallholder farmers because land degradation, tackling land degradation, the solution is not in forests. The solution is in croplands. And if we don't have strong alliances with farmers, then that challenge remains a big challenge. And so our greatest partners and stakeholders are the smallholder farmers. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Prof, for that. I will follow up on the TPPP when we get to the Q&As. So I would like to welcome the next speaker that will represent the ZAMCOM's Technical Executive Committee. So ZAMCOM is not alone here. They came with a full team, the governance structure of ZAMCOM. So the next speaker that I'm going to introduce is Commissioner Bogadi Matangwana from Botswana, and she's representing the government of Botswana and also ZAMCOM, as I've said. Commissioner Bogadi holds an integrated master's degree in water resources from Iowa State University in the US, and has a double honors in applied analytical chemistry from the UK. She currently serves in the Ministry of Land, Water and Sanitation in Botswana, and she also has extensive experience in soil and water chemistry, as well as transboundary water resources management. And of course, I'm going to mention that myself and Commissioner Bogadi are part of the Women in Water Diplomacy Network. As you can see, yes, nicely branded. So I've enjoyed spending time with you since the weekend during the World Water Week, learning about women in water diplomacy. But then now I'm also very much interested to see you wearing a different hat in this session. So you are welcome. Kindly make remarks on behalf of ZAMTech.
Thank you very much, Shanani, for that. Ladies and gentlemen, I recognize you, Anton L., the Director for Africa's region for SIWI and your partners, the ES, Ngamlangozi, and the ZAMTEC or ZAMCOM family here, and those also online. The ICRAF, madam, I do recognize you, and all the cooperating partners and online participants. I welcome you to this session. In its capacity as ZAMTEC chair, as alluded to by our director of ceremony here, is happy to welcome you all to this session. We consider empowerment of rural communities as one of the most practical ways of alleviating poverty, not only in Botswana, but in the Zambezi Watercourse, SADC region, and the continent at large. The strategic plan for the Zambezi Watercourse Commission, which we normally abbreviate as ZSP, lists persistent poverty among challenges that needs to be addressed in the Zambezi Watercourse. As you may have heard from my Executive Secretary, Mr. Ngamlangozi, in his opening remarks, the Zambezi Watercourse has embraced the spirit of cooperation in the development and management of its shared water resources. We believe that it is only through demonstrated and working cooperation that we can attract financial resources from development partners. And we sincerely thank all those that are in partnership with us for this effort. The cooperation of ZAMCOM has been extended to strategic partner organizations such as SIWI, with whom ZAMCOM has a memorandum of understanding in the implementation of the TIARA program, which we are going to hear about today. The benefits of rain-fed agriculture in the Zambezi Watercourse are immense. We all know that most of our population depend on it for food security, job creation, and much more. This is the most common way in which our rural communities practice agriculture due to lack of financing in the more advanced forms such as irrigation, which requires more investment. Ladies and gentlemen, Director of Ceremony, I would not wish to go on in considering this as a short session, and people would like to listen more to what is actually happening on the ground and on how we can assist our rural communities with practical solutions in the rain-fed agriculture. Let me assure you that ZAMCOM governing structures, including ZAMTEC, are committed to supporting the partnerships that have been established. And we are here attending this session for that very reason, to demonstrate that ZAMCOM supports rain-fed agriculture as it addresses some of the Zambezi Watercourse challenges as highlighted in our ZSP. As we journey ahead in ensuring we secure strategic investment, we have the following lined up. First, implementation of the strategic plan for the watercourse in order to realize the benefits of cooperation in an orderly, sustainable, and beneficial manner. Leveraging financial resources for implementation of projects and programs in the ZSP, and keeping various levels of stakeholders engaged and correctly informed. This session and collaboration falls under that plan to engage and make sure that we take our partners along. We leave no one behind. May I take this opportunity to thank SIWI, C4, and ICRAF for collaborating with ZAMCOM in this session. I wish you beautiful deliberations this morning. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Bukhadi. I think we've received great remarks of support for the project, and would like now, as she said, to hear what's happening on the ground. Kasonde, what are the activities that we're identifying? Where do we find expression in the ZSP livelihoods component? So we'll be moving on now to the presentations. And I would like to start off by inviting my colleague, Kasonde Mulenga, who is a water professional with work experience ranging from water resources planning and management, program and project management in the water sector. He has worked with both public and private sector in Southern Africa region, and he's currently managing the initiative that we are meeting on today, TIARA. And Kasonde holds a Master's of Science in Civil Engineering from the University of Witwatersrand, and is also focusing on water resources management in his academic background. And Kasonde is from Zambia. So Kasonde, yeah, take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Shinani, just want to thank you for the opportunity to share with you the steps that SIWI has taken in the implementation of the transforming investments in African rain-fed agriculture within the Zambezi Watercourse. So just to give you a brief background, Africa definitely has a food security challenge. We all know that only 5.5% of the arable land in Africa falls under irrigated agriculture. So the vast majority, which is 94.5, comes under rain-fed agriculture. So there's a lot of potential that needs to be done there. But we know also that, you know, Africa, as I've indicated, has a food security challenge. For instance, in 2016, over 218 million people were undernourished. That's a very large number. And you know, it's a fact that the production per hectare is the lowest in Africa if you compare Africa with other continents. So that goes to the food security challenge that we are experiencing in Africa. And as a result, about 35 billion worth of food is imported every year. You know, that's quite a lot. And obviously that goes to exporting virtual jobs. When you import food, you're definitely exporting jobs to the countries that are exporting to you. So Africa needs to do a lot in, you know, looking at the rain-fed agriculture farmer who are in the rural areas, and in this case, in the Zambezi Basin. So the TIARA project finds its expression under components 2. I think you heard the executive secretary of ZAMCOM talking about the 4 different components that the ZSP has. So there's the livelihoods component, and the TIARA project finds its expression around that particular component. So TIARA basically is a livelihoods project that is aimed at, you know, influencing policy to increase the water availability for the rural agriculture farmer, particularly in the arid seasons, in the seasons when there's not enough water. So I'll just move on and give you this slide, which basically gives the theory of change. When we were formulating the project, this is what we looked at. We looked at the current scenario where we have high levels of poverty, there's competition for water, there's food insecurity, as I've indicated, and looking at the interventions that the project hopes to that is currently it's tackling. We've got the inception phase, which looks at getting buy-in and, you know, engaging with various stakeholders within the agriculture space, so that, you know, we ensure sustainability for whatever interventions that we are employing. And then secondly, you look at the business case, where we are quantifying the jobs, the return on investment, basically doing a business case analysis. What is the value add when you invest in rain-fed agriculture? At the end of the day, is there value created? Is it worth investing in rain-fed agriculture? So TIARA project is basically aimed at, you know, formulating those business cases. And finally, we hope to build a regional capacity building program where we'll scale professionals who you know, raise awareness around rain-fed agriculture practices. And in so doing, we'll be tackling some of the SDG goals that are listed there, as you can see. So the TIARA project has a number of hotspots. In the implementation, we came up with some hotspots within the Zambezi Watercourse. There's the two in Zambia, which is the Iteji and Lusaka and the surrounding areas. There are two hotspots in Malawi, to the north bordering Tanzania, and to the south bordering Mozambique. And then there's the hotspot in Zimbabwe, which is the Harare province, Mashonaland East, West, and Central provinces. So in as far as partnership engagement is concerned, there are three different partners that the project hopes to leverage on. Firstly, we are looking at implementing partners, who we call the technical partners, that are tasked with running the pilot projects within the 5 hotspots that have been identified in the Zambezi Basin. And then secondly, we are looking at the knowledge partners that will assist in the production of knowledge and capacity building. During the site visits that we undertook during the past 2 months, we met, for instance, with the Golden Valley Agricultural Research Trust in about 70 kilometers from Lusaka, where there's a lot, we saw there's a lot that they're doing. There's partnership with the German government and so forth. So we'd like to leverage on some of that knowledge and then begin to build the business cases from there. And then finally, we're looking at the funding partners to share the concept note with. At the end of the day, we begin to mobilize resources. So in as far as the TIARA business case formulation, as I've indicated, the objective is to build empirical business cases in investing in rain-fed agriculture. So we've identified 2 different components for the business case. The first one is the calculation of the return on investments for the farmer. And then the second one is the estimation of the social, economic, and environmental benefits that will accrue as we implement the project. So some of the pictures that you see here are from Malawi. You see the hard pan that is being broken from the picks and so forth, the tools that are using. We also noted there are women involved and so forth. So there's a lot that as far as gender inclusion is concerned. So we've come up with an intervention framework which looks at the impact and some of the indicators that we are going to use in building our business case. So we're looking at the household food self-sufficiency, looking at the tons of staple food that can grow, and the income in the rural areas that has increased percentage-wise. And finally, with the ecosystem services and benefits that will be supported. That's quite important there. So part 1, if I could just explain more. So the objective is to compare the average net income per hectare before and after. In other words, the increase in revenue. So we're comparing the before and after scenarios for having employed rain-fed agriculture practices. This does not, of course, include the overall socio-economic benefit, because this is tackled separately under part 2. So the costs and benefits to the farmer, of course, that has to involve the farmer's perspective. It's one thing to say this has been the benefit, but we want to hear it from the farmer themselves, where they say we've had benefits and these are the benefits. So they should speak for themselves. This, of course, excludes the costs to that is due to government expenditures like training. So this is the framework on the return on investment calculation, because there are certain metrics that we need to come up with. It has to be very scientific. We have to compare numbers and so forth. So we're talking about yields, the establishment costs, the amount that goes into the agronomic inputs, the cost of the husbandry practices, and the cost of harvesting, for instance, the cost of handling. We know there's a lot of work that is involved when you begin to harvest and market your produce. The cost of maintenance as well, looking at the soil moisture. So these are the metrics that we're going to use in coming up with the return on investments calculation. So there's a lot of studies that have gone forth in as far as comparison. When you compare commercial irrigation, small scale irrigation, and improved rain-fed agriculture systems. For instance, there's a World Bank study that has been carried out. There's the website right at the bottom there, which estimated the yield per hectare for rain-fed agriculture cereals, having invested $100 in a farming venture. The result was that 4 tons was accrued from improved rain-fed agriculture, 0.44 tons was realized from the $1,000 for the small scale irrigation. And when it came to the large scale irrigation, 0.67 was realized. So we see here that the yield per dollar, for in-field expenditure, is 6 times greater when you compare improved rain-fed agriculture farming, when you compare it with the commercial farming. So there's definitely a case in looking at rain-fed agriculture systems. We need to advocate for the uptake and, so that it's managed at scale. Moving on to part 2, which looks at the environmental services for the ecosystems. Basically talking to sustainability issues. We're looking at high carbon sequestration, high groundwater recharge, low erosion. We saw firsthand during the hotspots visit how that some of the techniques go a long way in reducing reducing erosion and so forth. So going on to the economic and social impact, we are looking at the knock-on effects of job creation, especially for women and youth. That's quite important. And development of the local agricultural value chain, which should be developed as a result of the implementation of the project. So finally, I would like to just talk briefly on the financial mechanisms that we are looking at. There are quite many, and we're looking at varying the, marrying the two, in certain cases. We're looking at donor and philanthropic funding, corporate grants, sustainable procurement, impact investments, and environment and conservation financing, crop and weather insurance, PES, payment for ecosystem services, as well as carbon finance. So there's a lot that can be done there, and we're looking at targeting some of these financing mechanisms as we hope to attract investments to rain-fed agriculture. So this is my last slide. As you can see, this is a comparison. This was done in Malawi by an organization called TIARA. On one side of the plot, where there's green lush, crops there, that was where they implemented the rain-fed agriculture systems. You can see the difference. On the other side, the crops are yellow. There's not a lot happening there. So we are saying there's a lot that can be done through some of the techniques that have been identified. They've been available for a number of years, but the uptake has been very limited. So through the TIARA project, we hope to upscale, act as an advocacy, and attract investments to rain-fed agriculture systems. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kasonde. What an interesting picture illustrating, I think, the TIARA organization, or their approach. They call it the deep bed farming, where they basically have ditches on the sides of the ridges where they plant the crops, and those ditches serve to trap the water from running off. So the water then is actually encouraged to infiltrate into the soil, and of course then it means soil moisture, which then is good for the health of the crop and also the health of the soil. So yeah, thank you so much, Kasonde, for that presentation. I think there was also a lot of interest that I picked up from the floor on the slide where you demonstrated the yield per dollar. So I think you will probably look forward to getting some questions, maybe follow-up questions on that slide. So we will actually now move on to hearing more from a program manager in the Zambezi Watercourse Commission, Mr. Engineer Evans Kaseke, who will do a presentation on the framework for climate smart investments into rainfed agriculture in the Zambezi Watercourse, which is based on their ZSP. And thereafter, we can have a Menti and possibly some questions from the floor from based on the two presentations that we'll have had so far. So Evans, please take the stage.
Thank you, Janani. I would like to first, acknowledge my principals, the chair of ZAMCOM, Botswana. Also, we've got the deputy chair, Mozambique, in the audience, and also, my seniors, the executive secretaries. I can see OCACOM, Zambezi Watercourse Commission, SIWI, Anton, and then also key partners, WWF and IMI. So thank you very much. And here what I'm going to do is to just give you important information pertaining to framework for climate investments, and the ones, the main aspects of this framework that enable actually investments into the Zambezi through the rainfed agriculture. And of importance to the rainfed agriculture, I think we've heard quite a lot about the strategic plan, but these are key aspects, that the project has got to take note of, in its design. The first one, persistent poverty. 70% of the watercourse population are subsistent rainfed agriculture dependent farmers, and 44% live below the poverty datum line. And the second, also challenge that is also inherent to those hotspots that the program is going to be operating in. Environmental degradation. 51% of the watercourse is moderately degraded, while 14% is highly degraded. And deforestation and siltation of rivers as well as reservoirs are key problems within the hotspots. And then also a third challenge, disaster risk, and this is related to extreme droughts as well as floods. And these have got the effect of exacerbating the poverty that is inherent in those particular hotspot areas where the program is actually focused on operating in. And in relation to also the climate extremes, environmental degradation as well. Then also we are talking of investments. And when we're having a chat with some of my colleagues from SIWI, we talked about, they have to look at a number of aspects with respect to their program, because you can see also there are the challenges, infrastructure deficit. And in this case, it would be also infrastructure deficit, with respect to the success of a targeted rain-fed agricultural program. And we also have, there's also a problem of competing water uses, unbalanced development. This is a typical, issue in terms of unbalanced development. It is the cause of unbalanced development. As of now, most of the water, it goes towards hydropower development, and also irrigated agriculture. And in terms of issues of equity, that competing uses of water challenge, it's quite prominent. And lastly, amongst all those challenges, perennially poor crop yields, low incomes, poor nutrition. So these are typical challenges that the program has got to be aware of. I'm not really going to waste much time on this particular framework, because this is basic, and this is the one that that actually guides investments into the Zambezi Watercourse. And amongst the pillars of the strategic plan, entry is going to be through the livelihood support pillar. Then also there is the PDAC Zambezi, which is actually contributing to the rolling out of the strategic plan. And key aspects of the objective of PDAC Zambezi that the program has got to be aware of, that actually also incorporated into a lot of the documents that have been done to date, include building climate communities resilience, through rainfed agriculture, strengthening integrated landscape management, issues of environmental degradation, supporting adaptive capacity, as well as the institutions that work with the rainfed agricultural program. Then coordination and program management. These are aspects that are actually in place to support. So what this map just emphasizes is that the rainfed agricultural program is not actually going to be operating outside of what already exists in ZAMCOM. So these are the hotspots that the program is actually linked to. And in conclusion, the characteristics of the enabling multi-sectoral investment program with respect to how it is going to be, how it supports the proposed program, we're talking of there's deepened transboundary cooperation among member states. And here what I just want to mention is that there are also other instruments of transboundary cooperation that have been developed by the member states through a cooperative process that actually come in to support the proposed, rainfed agriculture program. Cooperating partnerships, these are encouraged. For example, already we know that, SIWI has partnered with the CIFO, right, to develop and implement that pilot project. Also, I would like to encourage that, partnerships within ZAMCOM are extremely encouraged. And in this case, when I was talking with some of my colleagues, there's WWF, we're talking of the environment, there's IMI, also in agriculture. Then also, don't forget, there are also partnerships that are being encouraged within the SADC region. We have got OCACOM, and we have got, ZAMCOM. So this is an environment that is very conducive for the success of the proposed rainfed agricultural program. Then broad-based multi-sectoral stakeholder PDAC Zambezi, that is the nature of PDAC Zambezi. It's a broad-based multi-sectoral stakeholder program. Water is the facilitator, but you would find that, it touches on agriculture, touches on tourism, it touches on a lot of activities within the other sectors. So be assured that, there's that broad-based support for the proposed TIARA program within the Zambezi. Political willingness in support of climate-proofed multi-sectoral investments, rainfed agriculture, as we have already acknowledged. Our principals are here, the chair of ZAMCOM, the deputy chair of ZAMCOM, and there's a myriad of support that is actually inherent to this, to the Zambezi, which will enable the rainfed agricultural program to succeed. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evans. I like that you emphasize so much on formulating partnerships. And I think that is also what you specialize in. as you specialize on partnership formulation of strategic transboundary watercourse frameworks like the one that you're currently developing in the Zambezi Basin, the Program for Integrated Development and Adaptation to Climate Change in the Zambezi Watercourse, or PDEC Zambezi, as we call it. So thank you so much for those two presentations, Kasonde and Engineer Evans. So we will now move on to yeah, so I think this is a thank you slide with some of the demonstrations of land preparation. I think this is the Pumvuza farming method. I think we've seen that in Zimbabwe. Yeah, thank you so much, Evans, for these. Oh yes, and the emphasis on gender. Yes, thank you so much. Yeah. Okay, so we're now gonna have a little bit of interaction. We're gonna have a Menti question, and we'll see if time allows us. We'll have a Menti question, and then after that, we'll move on to the last presentation, a very important one from our partners, C4 eCraft. So before that, I would like to invite you to take out your phone, especially our online participants, so that we can also get your input. And then we'll just project the questions just now. Yes, so the questions, I think you can see them on your phones or on your devices. We would like to find out from you, what is, how can you explain the lack of financing for rain-fed agriculture practices? And you have two options to choose from. And the first one would be, we haven't built the case yet. Or maybe am I too fast? You're still logging, you still, okay, I think Lidi is there already. That must be you. Okay, so one option is we haven't built the case yet. Benefits for human ecosystems are not significant. Benefits for humans and ecosystems are not significant. It is not a priority for governments, or local organizations are deploying these practices too small to get large funding. It isn't possible to improve the resilience of rain-fed agriculture to climate change. Oh, yeah, it isn't possible to improve the resilience of rain-fed agriculture to climate change. Or is enhanced rain-fed agriculture method expensive? Or would you rather all of the above? Interesting to see the feedback from everyone. Okay, looks like it is not a priority for government. Seems to be the one with the most, as a reason for the lack of financing for enhanced rain-fed agriculture. And how many government representatives are here? So I'm wondering if that is coming from the government representatives, or is it coming from the financiers or the advocates of enhanced rain-fed agriculture like Kasonde? Okay, so, and we haven't built the case yet. So there's also a role for you, Kasonde, and C4 eCraft on building the case. It seems like there isn't a strong or bankable case for the financiers. Could this maybe be coming from the financiers? And all of the above. So I don't see anything for it's expensive. I think from what we've seen, we've seen examples that show that it's actually quite affordable. It requires less inputs to enhance rain-fed agriculture. So, and the benefits for humans and ecosystems are not significant. Definitely everyone does not agree. So we do know the benefits for humans and the ecosystems through enhanced rain-fed agriculture practices or land management and water management practices. So is there anyone who would like maybe to elaborate if you, for the response that you've given, I would like to open the floor maybe for anyone who may like to elaborate. Yes, of course, our colleague from IMI.
Thank you very much. This is the first session where the real issues are on the agenda. Yeah, the water use by the majority of large numbers of people. In making the case, and now I also talking from IMI and a lot of infrastructure, I noticed that in making the case with the bags, it says excluding the cost of dams. While so I wonder why was that, and can't we make the case better by comparing the cost, including women's labor costs? Let's be, we shouldn't aggravate women's labors in this one if it's not remunerated, but to make the case in terms of efforts, capital investments in the water management. And then not in IMI, we wouldn't talk about rainfed agriculture because we change even the rainfed agriculture by digging the dams and having small pumps, etc. So we are making investments in the management of the water. We would call it agricultural water management or supplemental irrigation, but it's clear that there's a lot to gain. So in short, in making the case, how to get the agricultural water management tools evaluated in terms of cost, labor and capital cost, and then the benefits with all the other issues of markets, etc. that are there. Thank you. And I have to leave, but it's not because of lack of interest.
Thank you so much for that question, and also a suggestion to build on Kasonde on the measurements or the areas of investment. Yes, Ndate Pera, you have a question, and I'd also like to ask anyone who's on the app to see if our colleagues online may have posted a question on our app.
Thank you very much, Madam Facilitator, and thank you very much, colleagues, for presentation of very interesting approaches that ZAMCOM is taking. My interest really is to check, is there any effort in terms of selecting the types of crop that can be grown using rain-fed agriculture, looking at the inherent differences that you would get in terms of yields from different types of crops, particularly if you're talking about livelihoods, which obviously will mean not only for subsistence, but also to gain some resources to do some development. So that's one question. And what is the exact support that the program will be giving to farmers in terms of this? Is it equipment, or is it seeds? Is it what kind of support are you giving, or is it technical assistance in various forms, so that one can determine what level of investment obviously goes into this? I'm asking because we are having a similar approach in the Cobb or Kubango-Kavango River Basin, where we are supporting livelihoods, but we have selected various methods, including conservation agriculture, as well as supporting horticulture and leading those people to markets to actually get something out of the process. So we want to just check, because we are learning and we should be exchanging our.
Okay, thank you so much. I think, is there anything on the app? No, not yet. Okay, good to see you also. Yeah, a colleague in the who has been involved so much in TIARA since 2018. So I would like maybe now to move on to the next part. I'll just take the two questions, and then we move on to the presentation by Professor Catherine Muturi. And then I will ask Kasonde to note the questions that we've received. And then when we get into the panel discussions, those will be your first questions to tackle. Yeah.
My name is Henk Holtslag. I'm from the Smart Center Group, which is a group of WASH training centers in 9 countries in Africa. And I have 2 questions for Mr. Kasonde. First, is the difference in yield of maize mainly only because of the rain, or is it also because it's a different agriculture, it's mulching, etc.? So that's the first question. The second question is, do you also consider wells at the farms? Because as you know, if the farmer has a well at the house, the women do not have to work for collecting water, and you will have water for the garden in the dry season. So those are the two questions.
Thank you so much, Hank. And Jenny, okay, maybe during the panel, yes, I'll come back to you, and then at the panel discussion, then we'll start off with the questions that we have now received. I think all three contributions will build on them. So thank you so much for participating on the Menti contributions. We have noted this and we will build on them. So now I would like to invite Professor Catherine Muturi. You have already had her introduction. So we will move on to her presentation, and then after that, we will have the panel discussion. So Prof, I have eaten into your time, just 2 minutes of your time that I've eaten into, and I will compensate that somehow.
So I'm going to talk about global experiences and responses on landscape management, drawing heavily on what we've been able to do across the Zambezi Watercourse, and also some few examples from our experiences from C4E craft, and which can be scaled, scaled out in similar contexts within that environment. Now, I won't spend so much time, just a little outline. We look at the problem, and previous speakers have talked into the problem, and then look at land degradation and restoration efforts, looking at TIARA and then Moache, which is a catchment within Kenya, where I'm the director at C4E craft, and then conclusions and recommendations. Now, if you look at the problem when we talk about water, it depends on where you are looking at it from. So all these aspects in terms of the problem, somebody who is closer to a forest and looking at the conversion of forest and grasslands to cropland probably takes that more to heart. Then we have low production in terms of the rain-fed crops, especially during the dry seasons. We have a lot of deforestation, wetland encroachment, and climate change is a big issue. We have had droughts, alternating droughts and flooding. That's a big issue. Then we have these urban areas having inadequate water supply. There is a lot of water rationing. And then poor enforcement of conservation policies. If you look at that map, that photo, it's a photo in Kenya in one of the big rivers where a dam is being built. And this was in June last year, and it's completely dry. You can see there is no water. For the few people who go to get the water, they have to dig into the sand to get some water. So the problem is critical. Now, let's delve in more into TIARA. Initial studies, as has been said, 15 hotspots were identified, and 5 are what I'm going to look more into. We have 1 in Lusaka and its environs, so 2 are in Zambia, then we have 1 in Zim, and we have 2 which are cutting across 2 countries. So Malawi, Mozambique, and then we have Malawi and Tanzania. So these are the hotspots, and that is the kind of mapping, identifying the erosion hotspots. Now, in terms of a summary, if you look at the erosion risk in terms of the area and percentage, you actually find that the whole area which is mapped, the risk of erosion is not on the lower side, is more on the upper side. What does that mean? Probably addressing the issue is not as as grave as we would think. It's something which is actually within our reach in terms of investments to tackle, because that constitute the low level is 72%. Then we have low 5 to 12 around 3.9%, moderate and extremely severe, you only have around 1.88 kilometers square. Now, when we look at Harare as an example, Harare and its environs, and you look at the erosion of the slope, we have 0 to 5% slope, 5 to 16% slope, etc., you find the land use, which is mostly affected, is the cropland, meaning the contribution of cropland, interventions within croplands will result to significant impact in terms of tackling and reducing degradation in that area. And this is the same, this is the matrix of land restoration. We are looking at the severe. You remember the severe, which was, if you look at the previous, we looked at, oops, I was saying, if you look at the severe, we are looking from here downwards and then moderate. I don't have a pointer. So when is this one working? No. So if you look at that, what I was pointing to, if you look at croplands in the matrix under severe, that's a combined severe, very severe, and extremely severe. You find that croplands take the largest space. And then under the moderate, the same scenario is replicated. We find cropland, when you compare the area at the end, here we have 19 vis-a-vis 184. That is significant. And the message from this is that cropland possesses the highest erosion risk in the Harare hotspot, and thereby threatening sustainable rain-fed agriculture. And that's why in my introductory, message, I said, if we capacitate people within the cropland and build their capacity in terms of rain-fed agriculture and rally government, then it means we can actually address the problem effectively. I don't know whether farmers are at the decision-making table. I don't know whether the farmer organizations are the decision-making table. And I'm not sure whether our training is targeted to these communities. Now, the same case here, what we are looking at, what type of intervention, so that when we look at the interventions, are they expensive or it's something within our reach? You find that agroforestry and reforestation is one of the strategies you could use. You look at the agricultural lands, you look at the degraded forests, and soil and water conservation within the cultivated areas, agroforestry and conservation agriculture. All these we have manuals, right? We have resources we could use and which can be tweaked to the circumstance. So on that map on the right, actually, I mean that photo, you can see very green area and surrounded by very degraded area. These are interventions we have done in Tigray, in Ethiopia, just to show that things can be done and work. And why they are successful? Because of local community interventions. Then we have Mwache. Mwache is a catchment within Kenya. Here we had identified 29 hotspots. The only very high erosion places are at the end. You can see that part at the end and this part at the top, the lower side. And at the end there we have a dam which is being built, and that is where we actually have the severe rate of erosion. Now, same case, if you look at that validation of that hotspot, zone 1, the lower one, and now expanded, you still find that in this case, it is grasslands which have a bigger area to play. And that's why what we call the options by context approach, depending on where you are and the interventions you make, will be, based on the area and locality and the context. And same case, we are demonstrating using the same approach, the interventions, contour vegetative bands. And if you look at terracing, things like terracing, this is something the Ministry of Agriculture can actually do, and it solves a big problem. It addresses especially across the slopes. We were able to do water catchment, watershed management, and you can see the main thing you can draw from this slide are the drivers to soil erosion, approaches, and technologies, and the mapping of stakeholders within that space. So stakeholder mapping is very important, and then obviously the implementation requirements to address the problem. In Makueni County, this is a project we are leading same. We have been able to do government county level consultation across the whole of Kenya using the county governments. We have been able to come up with a trend analysis on forest and landscape restoration with water, and water is one of the greatest drivers to degradation, depending on where you are. We have come up with a tool on supporting farmer innovations to restore. You can see here we have planting basins, and we have data showing how much yields you can get double the yields just by having basins in very dry areas. So in conclusion, what I would say is that land and water managements need to be, integrated and inclusive. It requires coordination and strategies adapted to all levels of water governance, and should be considered in a sectoral way, engagement of people across the board, and collaboration, especially with local community. And this is actually a quote, other than the, especially with local communities, from the Global Water Forum for Food and Agriculture, G20. And those are examples in terms of stakeholder consultations and the interventions we are working. So in conclusion, I would say that we have a lot of resources. The map on the right is actually a map where we are doing interventions in Rwanda. We did this work under support of ACR, Australian Center for International Agriculture. The same place with interventions. You see, those are steep slopes. We have done tree planting, tree growing, and you are able to change a very dirty river and a very dirty lake, Lake Karago, into good water. So, and what I was speaking to is the Transformative Partnership Forum for optimizing rainwater use in rainfed agriculture in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. I invite you to be part of this partnership because it fits in well to TIARA. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor Muturi. I would say, let me invite you actually to stay on stage for questions that will be following, because we are now gonna have a moment for the questions that came up to be answered. But then I would like to also invite on stage a partnership development specialist for SIWI, who's advising us in terms of resource mobilization. Ms. Lidi Menua, who's an impact funding advisor. She's got 15 plus years experience in supporting projects contributing to inclusive societies in Africa. She's also a founder of Merrill Consulting. And Lidi, I have some questions for you that I would like you to start off with. And joining you there, Kasonda, I would like to also invite you so that you can also take note of the questions that were asked from the floor. And also, Evans, please take the stage for questions that will be directed to you. So, Lidi, I will start off with you. From the work that you have been doing with us in the TIARA project, tell us who is currently financing rainfed agriculture projects and what does that mean in terms of scale?
Thank you, Shanani, and hi, everyone. I'm very happy to be part of the panel, and thank you for this very crucial question, which should be the first question we should ask. If we want to upscale financing and upscale project, we should understand what's happening now, currently. What do we need to change? So who is currently financing rainfed agriculture project? Well, it's not governments right now. I mean, or if it is, it's not at a good scale. And and for valid reason, I would say, because most of the governments have been focusing on irrigation, and we see on that slide, you know, irrigation gets higher result, higher yield. So that's completely understandable. And our narrative is not to say stop irrigation and then invest into rainfed agriculture. We're saying that 90% of the land that is cultivated right now cannot get access to irrigation for natural reason or also for affordability. So what we are saying to governments is, okay, what about we also tap into this huge opportunity of improving yields, and how about we also recognize the role that the rainfed agriculture is doing as a service to protect, maintain the ecosystem. So that's currently the case. Governments are not the primary funders for rainfed agriculture practices. So currently, who is funding it? We're talking about donors, private individual donors or donors programs, which are funding local organizations that are grassroots, which are training the farmers. And with all the problems that we know, because those organizations are small, so they are actually struggling to get large scale funding. They don't have the capacity to upscale. So yeah, that's currently the case.
Thank you so much, Lydie, for that. So yeah, I think it's very clear, evident, we've got a funding gap. So I would move to now Kasonde. I would say let's prioritize the questions that we receive from the floor in terms of what we should be including in our intervention areas. So we gave you time to prepare for them. So maybe if you could answer in a minute.
Thank you so much, Inani. Thank you so much for the questions. So I'll take them as they came. One of the questions was, what type of crops are being cultivated? During our site hotspots visit, we saw there's maize crops being cultivated, there's millet as well. We saw firsthand how that rural farmers are also involved in seed banks, where they are customizing the seeds in order to adapt to climate resilient conditions, because there's obviously climate change that is happening, and you have to adapt as a result. So those were the crops. And what type of support are we giving as an institution? So we have funding that we are plowing into the business case formulation, as I indicated during my presentation. So there's going to be help that's going to be offered, for instance, with implements, the seed varieties, manure, and so forth. So we are helping them in setting up some of the plots so that with the empirical evidence that we're going to have, that will feed into the business case that we're going to build. And then moving on to the other question, are there wells that are being utilized? At the moment, not to a very large scale. That is something that obviously has to be cultivated. We need to leverage on that, because at the end of the day, we should look at providing water during the drier seasons when there's no rain, so to say. So if boreholes can be drilled through labor-intensive methods or mechanized methods, that can be very welcome. And then the difference in yield. I think you saw on the last slide, side by side, that was over the same harvest season, where enhanced rainfed agriculture systems were employed on one side of the field, and then on the other side, they were not put in place. So the rain obviously fell on both fields, but the kind of methods that we use, enhanced rainfed agriculture, resulted in a higher yield for the other part of the field. We also saw firsthand when we went to the Golden Valley Agriculture Research Trust in Chisamba, that's in Zambia, where two plots side by side, they are trying to see what is the value, what is the difference under the same climatic conditions. And we saw that there's definitely a difference. Soil moisture retention is much more when you use enhanced rainfed agriculture systems. I hope I've answered all the questions.
Okay. Yeah, so thank you. I think I will allow Professor Muturi to just demonstrate the link. What is the link between, you have presented on transformative partnership platform. What is the link with TIARA? And yeah, for those that may be interested in the network. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Actually, TIARA, when TIARA was born, that is when we saw an opportunity to come up. ICRAF has what we are calling transformative partnership platforms, which are alliances across a subject, across a unifying topic. And water is one of the areas we are looking into. So what I would say is that TIARA comes in as a transformative partnership platform, which would be called, quote unquote, engagement landscape, because it's involved in Zambezi rivers, like we have watercourse, like we have the Miombo woodlands. So it is within the water, rainfed water agriculture, within that TPP, but specifically along the Zambezi river course. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. And then I think an interesting question maybe for Evans would be, we've heard here that there's currently no funding from prospective funders, but then maybe after this meeting, funders would like to get in touch. What process or what step are we at within the ZSP now in trying to attract funding? How do we reach out? How do we get in touch to identify activities that we may be interested in the ZSP, particularly the livelihoods support process, livelihood support component of the ZSP?
Thank you very much for that question. Normally, the process it's not very difficult. The potential financiers, they get in touch through the office of the executive secretary. Yeah, the executive secretary down takes the issue to ZAMTEC, right? The potential financier has got to engage ZAMTEC, right? These are the directors, permanent secretaries within the from the riparian states. Then they interrogate the program and what needs to be done, and also give advice. And then from there, now based on their verdict, now they give direction as to which way they now go. And with that direction now having been given advice, they now, that is implemented now with supervision from the executive secretary, who now reports back to the technical committee, who eventually will also now, escalated the program to the Council of Ministers for watercourse-wide ownership of that program. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Evans. I think us as SIWI as well are very interested to seeing an investment plan that probably is to come that will mobilize resources for the Zambezi Watercourse, and we are happy to support that. I would like to give a final, Lydia, I think we have, there's so much homework that we have received from just listening to the questions that have come. In closing here, what do we need then to do to allow the financing at scale? What do we need to do as TIARA, as partners with C4, ICRAF, and ZAMCOM?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Shanani. What do we need to do? I would say there's two basic elements. The first one is to prove the case. And when I say to prove the case, is actually to recognize what is the benefit that those farmers are doing to the ecosystem by themselves, because that's not have been done. And that's the difficulty, because most of those impacts are invisible for everyone. We're talking about protecting the ecosystem, so that we need to make them visible. So that's the first pillar, is acknowledging that these farmers are doing a service to the environment, to the ecosystem, which is essential. And the second one, which is in parallel also, is get the governments on board. Because once you get governments on board, then after you can access to different type of financing mechanism, which are what we call result-based mechanism financing. So we're talking about payment for ecological services, which are based on recognition of those farmers providing a service to the environment and to specific beneficiaries that could be infrastructure by reducing their cost on maintenance, the cost linked to pollution, sedimentation, and so on. You've got carbon capture financing project also that you can use also to fund these practices. You've got also green bonds. You've got all those mechanisms are result-based. So we have to demonstrate that there's an impact. But for that, you need to get the government also with policies, frameworks, and more than just willing to do it.
Thank you so much, Lydie. And you'll see on the program right now, our last item would be to do the wrap up of the session and closing by the Zambezi Watercourse riparian country representative. Like I said, ZAMCOM is not here alone. They came with a delegation of their member countries. And in terms of closing, Mr. Robert Sunday, who is a senior hydrologist, and he's also a member of the technical committee of the Zambezi Watercourse Commission, was not able to travel today, but then he pledges so much his support for this session. And I will just quickly read a message that we've received for him. He says, on behalf of the Zambezi fraternity, I wish to appreciate the initiative and efforts of all who have made this session a reality. We sincerely owe you and we value your support. We value and connect water as a central item for human well-being and human development. Water is central to socio-economic activities and livelihoods. It connects people and nations. That is the spirit and nature of water. Very unfortunate, while water is the engine of development transformation, it is not everywhere in time and in place. It is not enough in quantity and in good quality. As a result, a big percentage of the Zambezi population is depending on rainfall for farming and for livelihood. That being the case, therefore, rain-fed agriculture need to be meaningful with production equivalent or exceeding invested fund, energy, and time. Therefore, rain-fed agriculture need to be transformed today, transformed through applying techniques such as rainwater harvesting, land and soil management that we've discussed today. And therefore, the TIARA initiative and the Zambezi strategic plan have come at the right time. He encourages us to harness it and the opportunities for it. And he concludes by emphasizing the need for investment in water management and development, the need to transform rain-fed agriculture through best practices and technology, and the need to mobilize funds to implement the Zambezi strategic plan and improve the livelihoods of the people in the basin. I truly appreciate the message from the representative of the Republic of Tanzania, because this is what we desire for TIARA, that within ZAMCOM, there is ownership from the member countries themselves. And we will be following up, of course, with the partnerships that we have created throughout World Water Week, and finally having the opportunity to have met the member countries of ZAMCOM, the commissioners and the technical executive committee. So with that, I'd like to thank you so much for being part of this session. And I encourage that after this session or within here, you continue to engage the panel for the questions that may not have been answered fully, and getting to know the project better. Thank you so much for your contributions.